The world never asked where you went, because you never screamed when you started slipping. You didn't disappear all at once. You faded softly like breath on glass. You answered texts. You smiled at the right time. You laughed when it was expected. And everyone called that healing. But you weren't healing. You were hiding. You didn't cry for help, not because you didn't need it, but because asking felt heavier than staying silent. You've been in rooms full of people and still felt like background noise. You've been fine, so long that the word doesn't even mean anything anymore. Just a placeholder, a mask that fits too well. So the world assumed you were okay, because you never gave it a reason to think otherwise. But here's the truth. You never stopped hurting. You just stopped expecting anyone to notice. Some mornings, you open your eyes and wish you hadn't. Not because you want to die, but because you're tired of feeling like you don't know how to live. You're not chasing happiness. You're not dreaming big. You just want the noise in your chest to be quieter than yesterday. That's it. You don't want to climb. You don't want to rise. You just don't want to drown again. And yet somehow you still show up. You brush your teeth. You reply to messages. You pretend you've got plans this weekend so no one asks what your silence really means. They say, it gets better. And maybe it does. But what they never talk about is how long it takes to just stop getting worse. How hard it is to hold yourself together when even gravity feels like it's pushing you down on purpose. You don't want advice. You don't want motivation. You just want one moment where nothing hurts and no one asks and your breath doesn't feel borrowed. That's not weakness. That's not giving up. That's surviving. And you're doing it quietly better than anyone ever gave you credit for. You were always the one who noticed when someone's voice cracked mid-sentence and they thought they covered it. You were the one who remembered things they forgot they even said. You saw pain in people's eyes before they had the words to explain it. And when you spoke up, when you said, hey, something's not right, they told you to relax, to stop being so emotional, to not take everything so seriously. But you weren't reacting too much. You were just the only one reacting at all. This world doesn't know how to hold people who feel. It celebrates numbness. It rewards masks. It claps for people who bury things deep enough to look functional. And you were always the one who refused to go numb, who chose truth even when it burned, who stayed soft in a world that called it weakness. You weren't too sensitive. You were just honest. Honest about the weight of everything. Honest about what it costs to care in a world that keeps score in silence. You saw what they couldn't, felt what they wouldn't, and held it anyway, alone, quietly. They didn't know how to love that. They didn't know how to handle you, so they told you to stop. But what they really meant was, you remind me of everything I buried. You wake up, you show up, you breathe. And somehow, that's still not enough for some people. They want explanations, they want reasons, they want clarity for pain they've never had to carry. They ask why you're so quiet, why you don't smile as much anymore, why you flinch at simple things, why you take longer to reply, why you say I'm tired like it means more than sleep. And you try to put it into words. But how do you explain a weight that never leaves your chest? How do you describe a sadness that didn't arrive all at once, but built itself brick by brick until you couldn't tell where it ended and you began? You don't owe anyone a tour of your wounds. You don't have to justify why you're not who you used to be. Not everyone survives as the same version of themselves. You've had to rebuild yourself with shaky hands and borrowed hope. Some days, all you've got is breath, and even that feels like work. So no, you don't owe them stories. You don't owe them strength on their terms. You're not dramatic. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not a question that needs answering. You are a person who stayed when it would have been easier to go. And that is enough, even if no one claps, even if no one understands, even if you never find the words to say it out loud. Not everyone vanishes with drama. Not everyone leaves with noise. Some people disappear the way light fades, slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing until it's gone. They stop texting first. They stop speaking up in conversations. They stop showing their real faces and start offering versions of themselves that feel safer. And no one asks why. Because it's easier to pretend nothing's wrong than to face the discomfort of someone slowly unraveling in front of you. They fade out of group chats. They cancel plans. They say, "I'm just tired." And everyone nods like that explains it. No one asks what tired really means. But tired isn't always about sleep. Sometimes it's about carrying too much alone for too long while pretending it's fine. And when they finally go silent, when the responses stop coming and their laughter disappears, everyone says they changed. Everyone says, "I didn't see that coming." But the signs were there. They were just quiet. And we've built a world that only responds to people who scream. Some people didn't want to leave. They just didn't know how to stay in a place where no one noticed they were slipping. If someone had asked, not casually, not politely, but seriously, "Are you okay? Really?" maybe things would be different. Maybe they'd still be here. Not fixed, not perfect, but here. But no one did. And now it's too quiet for anyone to hear what they never got the chance to say. No one gave you a medal for waking up today. No one saw the battle it took just to get out of bed, to move, to breathe, to stay. They only notice survivors when they come back louder, stronger, smiling. But what about the quiet victories? The nights you didn't give in, the mornings you didn't disappear, the moments you held yourself together with nothing but instinct and breath. You didn't quit, even when you wanted to, even when your body felt like a weight you couldn't carry anymore. Even when your thoughts turned against you, you kept going. And that matters. Even if no one claps, even if no one says it out loud, you're still here. Not because it was easy, not because you're fearless, but because something deep inside you, something unspoken, chose to stay. They don't talk about people like you. Because your story isn't dramatic. It's not marketable. It's not made for headlines. But it's real. And that makes it more powerful than any success they'll ever put on a pedestal. You are not weak for surviving. You are not broken for feeling tired. You are not behind. You are still here. And that means you already won the hardest part. You don't have to prove anything today. Not to them. Not to anyone. Not even to yourself. You woke up and already the world expected movement. It expected answers. It expected progress. But healing doesn't move in straight lines. It doesn't look like productivity. It doesn't always feel like growth. Sometimes it just means you didn't collapse today. You're allowed to be still, to sit with your mess, to not fix it yet, to breathe without direction, to rest in the middle of the fight without feeling like you're failing. The world claps for people who bounce back, but they don't see what it costs to bounce at all. You don't have to pretend to be okay. You don't have to perform your pain or your recovery just to make others comfortable. Some days, standing still is the bravest thing you can do, because it means you haven't walked away, even when everything in you wants to. Don't rush to shine. Don't rush to explain. Don't rush to look strong for people who never stayed long enough to understand your softness. You are not behind. You are not weak. You are not broken from moving slowly or not moving at all. You're healing, even if no one sees it, even if you don't feel it yet. Just don't rush. There's no finish line here. Just one breath, then the next. You think your story doesn't matter, that your pain is boring, that your silence means you have nothing to give. But someone right now is walking through a version of hell you've already survived, and they don't need a hero. They just need proof that it's possible to make it through without becoming someone else. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to stand on a stage. You don't have to turn your scars into some kind of speech. You just have to stay. Because your survival is louder than you think. Because someone's watching you, not out of curiosity, but out of hope. They're looking at your quiet to see if quiet can heal. They're looking at your pace to see if slow is still allowed. They're not waiting for you to be perfect. They're just waiting for you to not disappear, to still be here, to remind them that breathing is enough. You think no one's listening because the world only turns up the volume for people who scream. But your voice doesn't need to be loud to matter. Your presence is enough. even if no one says thank you, even if no one notices, because someone out there isn't looking for noise. They're looking for something real. And you, just as you are, might be the first real thing they've heard in a long time. If no one's told you this today, I'm glad you stayed.